Jonas heaved a deep sigh of contentment as he propelled himself back towards the habitat module after a long 12-hour shift working on the solar arrays. Rotating his aching shoulders, he looked forward to relaxing with Samantha, his partner of 3 wonderful years. She always knew how to help him unwind after a stressful day. As he approached the module across the barren, cratered surface of the moon, Jonas checked the time on his spacesuit display. Right on schedule. Samantha should have dinner heating up for them by now. His mouth watered just thinking about it. Her homemade lasagna was to die for, even when made from freeze-dried ingredients. Moving in through the outer airlock, Jonas removed his helmet and inhaled the familiar recycled air. He could already smell traces of garlic and tomato sauce. His stomach rumbled audibly. "Honey, I'm home!" Jonas called out cheerfully as he propelled himself further inside. No response. That was odd. Samantha always came rushing to greet him after his solar array shifts, throwing her arms around him in a never-ending zero-G hug. Jonas frowned, looking around the compact living space as he steadied himself on a handhold. All seemed in order, though the lasagna sat untouched in the small kitchen. "Babe, where are you?" Jonas called out again. "Dinner's getting cold." Movement caught his eye, and he noticed Samantha's zero-G rackets drifting lazily near the main airlock. She never left her gear out carelessly like that. A pang of worry flickered through him. Jetting quickly through the module, he headed for their sleeping pod nestled in the far corner. As he approached, hushed whispers reached his ears, along with an unfamiliar raspy clicking. Adrenaline flooded his system as instinct screamed something was very wrong. Peering into the sleeping pod, Jonas's worst fears crystallized in front of him. There was Samantha, his beloved partner, entangled intimately with Vrex, her alien tennis coach. His purple exoskeleton clashed garishly with her cream-colored skin as they floated together, limbs intertwined. "What the hell is going on here?" Jonas bellowed, rage boiling up inside him like solar plasma. Samantha and Vrex split apart in a flurry of flailing limbs, both spewing hasty explanations and excuses that fell on Jonas's deaf ears. All he could hear was the pounding rush of betrayal. Vrex's serrated tentacles writhed in distress. "Please, Jonas, let me explain," he clicked urgently. "We were just... Samantha needed some private lessons and..." Jonas lunged furiously, grabbing one of Vrex's tentacles. The alien shrieked in fear and pain, scuttling out of his reach. "Stay away from her, you bastard," Jonas yelled. Samantha sobbed, trying to calm him down, but his anger was beyond reason now. A dangerous heat flooded his mind, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. With another panicked click, Vrex scrambled out of the pod and made a break for the nearest porthole. Jonas tried to grab his segmented tail, but only managed a glancing blow. The alien pried open the porthole and ejected himself into the airless surface, disappearing from view. Jonas trembled violently, left alone with Samantha in their ravaged home. He glowered at her. "How could you do this to me? To us?" His voice broke as tears stung his eyes. Samantha reached for him, distraught. "Jonas, you have to listen to me. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." But any excuses were dust on the solar wind. Jonas turned from her in disgust. The foundation of his life shattered beyond all repair. Over 3 years, gone in an instant. It was then he heard the outer airlock cycle open. David, one of the few colonists Jonas considered a true friend, floated inside. "Whoa, buddy, I could hear you yelling from my mod." David trailed off as he took in the scene, glancing between Samantha's tear-streaked face and Jonas's mask of devastated fury. "What the hell happened?" Jonas turned to his friend, rage and pain burning in his eyes. "It's over between us," he said coldly to Samantha. Looking back at David, he gave a single sharp nod. "Let's go. We've got an alien to hunt down." Jonas quickly explained to David how he had returned from his shift to find Samantha and Vrex together in an intimate embrace. The shocking betrayal still burned white-hot in his mind. David shook his head in disbelief as they floated out of the module, closing the airlock door on Samantha's muffled sobs. "That's messed up, man. I never would have expected her to cheat on you." "With an alien, no less," Jonas fumed. 3 years together, and she throws it all away for that thing." David clasped Jonas's shoulder, hearing the pain beneath the anger. "I'm sorry, buddy. What a rotten thing to come home to. So what's the plan? Are we going after Vrex?" Jonas nodded, jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. "You bet we are, and I could use some backup." Adrenaline and fury coursed through his veins, hungering for vengeance. "I've got your back. No one treats my friend like that and gets away with it." David propelled himself towards the lunar rover parked nearby. The two men squeezed into the pressurized cabin. As David powered up the systems, Jonas gazed out the dust-streaked window towards the looming blue earth. How often lately had he wished to return home? This lifeless rock no longer held any appeal for him. Perhaps it never truly had, and it had just taken Samantha's betrayal to open his eyes. Shaking off those wandering thoughts, Jonas switched on the rover's external cameras. He quickly spotted fresh vehicle tracks leading away across the desolate surface towards the labyrinth of boulders in the distance. "That's got to be Vrex making a run for it," Jonas said. "He's from one of those burrowing clans out by the crater ridges." David gunned the throttle, the rover lurching into pursuit. "Then that's where we're headed." They shot forward, following the meandering trail at top speed, but the tracks disappeared once they reached the jumbled piles of massive boulders. Vrex could have gone in any direction from here. Jonas slammed a fist against the control panel in frustration, but he knew Vrex's people had extensive burrows and dwellings dug into the craggy foothills. "Keep going towards the ridges," Jonas told David with simmering determination. "We'll find that backstabbing coward's hovel soon enough." David gladly complied, weaving them up into the hills. He had never seen his mild-mannered friend so intense before. But he understood it completely. Betrayal cut deep in the best of men. After 15 tense minutes of searching the labyrinthine valleys and ridges, David spotted a rover parked outside a dugout cave entrance. "Bingo! Looks like we found Vrex's little hidey hole." Jonas's pulse thundered in his ears. "Take us right up to it, and hand me that tow cable." His voice held the ice of a man poised on the brink. David complied without hesitation. "You didn't abandon friends in their hour of need." They parked within 10 meters of the cave. Jonas's breath came quick and shallow as he stared at that looming dark maw. Somewhere within, Vrex cowered, as well he should. Jonas's muscles tensed, ready to spring into action. He turned to David. "Let's go bag ourselves an alien." David met his eyes and nodded. Together, they exited the rover and propelled themselves towards the cave entrance, tow cable in hand, vengeance in heart. Jonas and David reached the mouth of the cave entrance where Vrex stood pleading from a rocky outcropping, his purple tentacles twitching in distress. "Please, Jonas, let me explain." Vrex clicked urgently in his native tongue. "Samantha was just lonely. I was trying to comfort her." But Jonas was deaf to any excuses. All he could see was red. This alien had violated the woman he loved. There would be no mercy. "Save your breath," Jonas spat. "I'm done with lies." He began scanning the cave supports, looking for the optimal structural point to strike. The main wooden beams were thick, but the rover's tow cable could do some serious damage. David touched his arm, pointing to a smaller brace wedged between two large boulders. "That angle brace there. We snapped that. This whole entrance is coming down." Jonas smiled grimly. "Perfect." He began unspooling the tow cable, fashioning it into a lasso. Vrex's movements grew more frantic. "Jonas, think about what you're doing. This is madness." "The only maddening thing is how blind I was to your true nature," Jonas answered coldly. He stepped into the cave mouth, whip-cracking the cable lasso over the wooden brace. David took up the slack and attached it to the lunar rover's toe clasp. With the press of a button, the cable went taut. The engines whined as Jonas gunned the throttle. Vrex scuttled backward, deeper into the cave system. But there was no escaping Retribution. Not this day. The brace beam creaked and splintered under the strain. Dust rained down as the first cracks appeared. Jonas kept the pedal to the metal. "That's it! Brake, damn you!" With a resounding snap, the beam shattered and the entrance began caving in. Vrex's panicked cries echoed from within until cut off by the deafening collapse. When the chaos settled, Jonas and David stood solemnly looking upon a wall of rubble. What had started as retribution had turned lethal, but the deed was done now. Jonas coiled the cable with steady hands. He turned to David, seeing his own lingering doubts mirrored in his friend's eyes. Had they gone too far? David put a hand on Jonas's shoulder. "Come on, let's get back before anyone realizes what happened." Jonas let out a shaky breath and nodded. He took one last look at the collapsed cave mouth before following David back to the rover. The anger that had consumed him was already cooling to regret. They drove off in silence beneath the unblinking stars, two small men against the immensity of space. Jonas gazed up at the Earth's distant blue curve, thoughts heavy. There would be a reckoning when they returned to the colony. But Samantha and her betrayal awaited light years away. Here, on this pitted lunar plain beneath infinite constellations, it was just him and David. Jonas took comfort in his friend's steady presence. The coming days stretched before them, uncertain. But they would face the future true, two brothers united by bonds far stronger than fickle romance. Earth's beckoning light shone brighter with each passing mile. Home called to them both, and come what may in the days ahead, they would walk that path together. Jonas and David drove on in solemn silence beneath the voidal blackness, leaving the collapsed burrow behind them. But though distance grew, the deed still haunted them. Jonas replayed the moments before the cave-in, seeing Vrex's panicked retreat deeper into the burrows. What had started as vengeance had turned deadly. The anger that drove him now cooled into regret. "Do you think he quote dead?" David finally voiced the grim question hanging over them. Jonas sighed, shoulders slumping wearily. "I don't know. The rubble blocked the entrance, but there could be other ways out further in." But if Vrex survived, would he dare show himself at the colony again? David shook his head. "I still can't believe Samantha would cheat on you, but what we did back there..." He trailed off, jaw clenching. Jonas put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "You were only trying to help me in my darkest hour. I don't blame you for how far things went." David met his gaze. "We went too far, but the deed is done now. Let's just get back before anyone realizes we were out here." Jonas swallowed hard and nodded. The lunar plain stretched empty and endless before them. How long until they left this dead world behind? He yearned again for the living greens and blues of home. The colony perimeter fence appeared on the horizon as they crested a low ridge. David brought the rover to a halt, engine idling. "Once we pass through those gates, everything changes," he said solemnly. "Are you ready for that?" Jonas stared towards the scattered modules, heart heavy with doubt. "No, but staying out here changes nothing. Let's face what comes next." They drove on, the looming Earth rising behind them. Soon there would be questions, accusations even. But Jonas found comfort knowing David would stand with him. The rover entered an access tunnel passing through the massive airlock gates. As the interior pressurized, Jonas steeled himself for the coming storm. David clasped his shoulder one last time. I need to get back to my module before the night rotations start. Will you be all right? Jonas nodded with a thin smile. Thanks to you. I'll come find you after I talk to Samantha. They parted ways, David heading off into the warren of tunnels while Jonas made his way back to the habitat module alone, each step heavier than the last. He stopped outside the closed door, hesitating. What waited beyond? Forgiveness? Condemnation? There was only one way to know. Entering quietly, he found Samantha sitting alone in the kitchen, eyes red from crying. She looked up, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "You came back," she whispered in surprise. "Jonas, I'm so sorry for everything. Please." She reached for him, trembling. Jonas stepped back, the wounds too raw for platitudes. "It's too late for sorry." Samantha's hand dropped away, face crumpling in anguish. "What can I do?" she pleaded. "I never meant to hurt you this deeply." Jonas turned away, unable to meet those shimmering eyes. "Just go. It's over between us." She sobbed but did not argue. Slowly gathering her things, Samantha stopped before the airlock. "I hope someday you can forgive me," she said softly, before disappearing through the door. Jonas watched it close behind her with an air of finality. Collapsing into a chair, he dropped his head into hands. It was over now. All of it. Jonas sat alone in the dim habitat module, emotionally drained. The events of the last 24 hours replayed in his mind on an endless loop, returning home to find Samantha's betrayal, hunting Vrex for retribution, and burying the alien alive in his collapsed burrow. Now, Samantha was gone from his life for good, but the damage was done. He kept revisiting those terrible moments, wondering how things had gone so wrong so fast. A knock on the airlock hatch drew Jonas from his brooding. He opened it to find David floating there, concern etched on his face. "I wanted to check on you after everything," David said. "Can I come in?" Jonas nodded and waved him inside. "Thanks for coming by. Just trying to process it all, you know?" David squeezed his shoulder. "I can't imagine what you're going through, but I'm here for you." Jonas managed a weak smile. "I know. You've been a true friend through this nightmare." He hesitated. "Have you heard any talk around the colony? About Vrex?" David shook his head. "Nothing yet. No one knows what happened out there except us." He studied Jonas carefully. "Maybe it should stay that way." Jonas turned away with a sharp sigh. As much as he wanted to forget that day forever, the truth had ways of coming out. "No more secrets. I'll confess to the commander in the morning." "Are you sure that's wise?" David asked with concern. "You were just reacting to Samantha's betrayal. The commander might understand that, given the circumstances." "Maybe, but it doesn't excuse what I did," Jonas said. "I need to make this right." David nodded solemnly. "I'll be right there with you." Jonas clasped his friend's arm, emotion swelling in his chest. "I don't deserve your loyalty after dragging you into this, but thank you. That's what friends are for. I just hope the commander shows leniency." "As do I," Jonas said. "But whatever comes, we'll face it together." The next morning, Jonas and David entered the commander's office side by side. She listened gravely as Jonas confessed everything that had happened with Vrex. In the end, she decided to levy a punishment of labor hours rather than harsher sanctions. "You were under great emotional duress," she conceded, "but do not mistake this for exoneration. Should Vrex have perished, your actions would demand a much sterner response." They left the office hours later, exhausted but grateful. David clapped Jonas on the back. "See, the worst is behind us now." Jonas gazed out the window at the Earth hovering blue over the lunar horizon. "Not just yet. I have one more stop before I can truly move on." David nodded knowingly. "I'll be waiting right here when you get back." Alone in a shuttle, Jonas made the journey from the moon back to Earth. From the passenger window, he watched the colony disappear into the blackness of space. Though he had called it home for years, it now felt like an empty shell harboring only regret. A fresh start awaited. The shuttle touched down at the spaceport amid green rolling hills. Jonas stepped out under the warm sun, breathing deep the scent of life and possibility. Samantha was in the past now, and he was finally home. Whatever the future held, he would face it with courage and wisdom. Handshake deals under starlight were well and good, but true bonds went far deeper. He understood that now. With David still at his side, Jonas looked to the horizon with renewed hope. This was only the beginning.